Can you describe the vision of your school? How can teacher leaders raise up the people around them? How can schools and districts better communicate with their communities? Welcome back to another episode of the Teachers on Fire podcast, airing live on YouTube every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern. My name is Tim Cavey, and my mission here is to warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your professional practice. Today's Teacher on Fire is Dr. Joe Sanfelippo. Joe is a celebrated educational leader and author. During his tenure as superintendent, his Wisconsin school district was twice recognized for innovation by the International Center for Leadership in Education. Joe was named one of the 100 most influential educators by District Administration magazine. And in 2019, Education Dive, now K-12 Dive, awarded him National Superintendent of the Year. You can connect with Joe in the following places. On LinkedIn, simply enter his name, Joe Sanfelippo, and then look at that great branding. He's got the same handle, friends, Joe_Sanfelippo on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, X, and then last but not least, don't forget his website, joesanfelippo.com. Joe, thank you so much for sharing some of your Saturday morning with the Teachers on Fire audience. Are you, my friend, ready to light it up?
I'm ready. I think I'm ready. I'm literally on the side of the road, Tim. So, I mean, like we're talking about, I don't have a van. There is a river back here, but I don't have a van down by the river. We actually upgraded to a Honda Pilot. A year ago, I would have had a van down by the river, but here we are. So yeah, I'm ready to ignite anything. We should get this thing going. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you and I know that reference well, and shout out to Chris Farley and a great series of sketches. I'm afraid that some of my younger listeners may not recognize that, but yes, thank you for joining us. Okay.
I hope so. Everybody knows everybody. It's got to be. Now it's on t-shirts and memes, right? But, you know, it turned into a great sketch to t-shirts and memes. Either way, you know what's going on in a van down by the river.
Well, this is right on brand, and I'm sure we'll get into it, Joe, because you are the king of going mobile and going live, interacting with the people wherever you are, and I so appreciate. I've admired for years, literally years, how well you've done this, and so what a pleasure it is for me to finally connect with you in real time. Before we get into your work and mission and we talk about leadership, Joe, would you take us to that low moment of adversity? Some kind of a challenge that you've experienced on your personal or professional journey, and then describe how you overcame it.
Oh, you're gonna just start with the heavy hitters, man. My goodness. I think what ended up happening with me was I was trying to take care of everybody else and not take care of myself, not take care of my family. And I think one of the things that's important for us to understand as educators, regardless if you're in the office, if you're in the classroom, if you're on the playground, if you're in the in the cafeteria, wherever you are, I think a lot of times we feel guilt for not being everything to everyone, and that really tends to grind us. So part of the low point actually turned into almost a mission of making sure that it didn't happen with other people. And the low point was actually, that was years ago. I was in my first year as a principal, and I had two sons at the time. My wife and my sons were at home, and I came home one day and we were all sitting at the table and we're eating and eating. And my kids were real young at the time. They were 5 and 2. And we're sitting there, we're eating. And the next thing I know, I pick my head up and my sons are both gone. They're back in the room doing whatever. And I'm eating and I'm just like, I turned to my wife. I said, what happened? Where'd they go? And my wife said, your son just asked you 3 questions in a row and you never even picked your head up. She goes, we're not going to leave, but you better figure this thing out pretty quick. So I think it was like, yeah, all right, we better figure this thing out pretty quick. And I think knowing that a lot of our people walk between two places where they wonder where their value is, because they're guilty when they're not at school and they're guilty when they're at school because they're not at home. If we can figure out ways to connect those two places, I think we find ourselves in a great spot as leaders. And I think that's kind of been the mission over the course of the last, what ended up being, 18 years of putting that thing together and trying to figure out ways that we could help other people create some value and acknowledge that that they have value, even if they're not in all places at all times.
Beautifully put. And I have to say, thank God for great patient partners who are there to sort of realign us from time to time, right? When those values get a little bit skewed. I want to talk about your books, Dr. Joe, and we've got a number here that you've put out over the last few years. We've got Hacking Leadership, and I may not get these exactly in order, so forgive me, but we've got Hacking Leadership, 10 Ways Great Leaders Inspire Learning That Teachers, Students, and Parents Love. We've got Crafting the Culture, of course, 1 Minute Walk to Work, which is sort of a great capstone on years of going live on your walks to school. And then my favorite, Lead from Where You Are. So I'm going to throw you a couple of questions from that last title, Lead from Where You Are. The first one is this: we all feel better when our work is acknowledged because it helps us to see that what we did or are doing is meaningful. So I'm curious, Joe, as a part-time vice principal myself, how have you received or done this well, acknowledging the work of the people on your team?
Okay, so here's the thing, Tim, and I think this is, of all the things that I've ever written, of all the things that I've ever done, of all the things that we've ever done in Fall Creek, Wisconsin, without hesitation, the one that has had the biggest impact on everything we do is what do we do to recognize the greatness of our colleagues, acknowledge the greatness of our colleagues, and extend the greatness of our colleagues. And of your colleagues is important because it's really hard to take care of kids when we're not taking care of the adults, taking care of the kids. Okay, so I think before I get to the acknowledgement piece, you have to think about, are you willing to recognize the great stuff that's going on so you can acknowledge it? Because a lot of times we put our heads down and try to get to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And if you're always doing that, you walk past so many things that could have brought you a little bit of joy and brought you back the next day feeling a little bit better worth the work. So I think logistically in the school, it looks like this. If you're walking down a third grade hallway and you see a third grade teacher doing great things, you walk into that third grade teacher's room and tell that third grade teacher she's doing great things, right? You've recognized that, you've acknowledged that, okay? And here's the thing. I think a lot of people do that. I really do. But when you do the third thing, when you extend the conversation to the 8th grade science teacher who has no business of being in 2nd grade, and you tell the 8th grade science teacher about the great things happening in 3rd grade, what inevitably happens is the 8th grade science teacher walks to the 3rd grade classroom to tell the 3rd grade teacher that she's doing great things. And the reason that he does it is because at some point somebody did it for him and it felt good. And we just want to live and work in a place that feels good. I'm not even talking about great. I'm talking about good. Get yourself to good every day. Give yourself a shot at great, right? It's hard to have a great day when you spill coffee on your way to work. Right? I also don't think there's a lot of people that wake up in the morning and say, man, I can't wait to be average today. Right? Like, average is not a place that you aspire to be. It's a place that you end up. It's like going to Denny's. Like, nobody goes to Denny's. You just end up there. This is what happens with average. So if you put yourself in a position to see some of the great things, you're going to see the great things.
So good. First, you've got to be in that position where you're able to see it and identify it. Then you call it out, acknowledge it. And then that third piece is so important. Spreading the word, being that good news gossip around your building, I think is so key. We want to say good morning to Frank joining us on YouTube. He says, looking good in the van down by the river again, pal.
Always.
And
yeah, it's always, he's always there to check it out.
He adds on Honda Man. And we've got Tyler, another principal from Alberta, tuning in also on YouTube. He says, a value in family and relationships. Good stuff. And thanks for being vulnerable, Joe. So thank you both for joining us, Frank and Tyler, this morning. A second quote from the book that I appreciated, Joe, is the job of a great leader is to help everyone envision a collective goal and eliminate barriers in the way. Can you share an example of a collective goal that you had at some point from your school or district?
Yeah. So here, the thing about that one, I think, is it kind of goes, again, it goes in two parts. The first part is when you can create, so first of all, if you can create collective efficacy around a mission, a vision, and values, everybody knows and understands the language that we use, the conversations that we have, and where it's all going. Before you get to that point, before you develop this collective efficacy for what you do in the school, I think you have to help people with their self-efficacy and know that what they're doing has, it creates momentum for the collective group of, collective goal of the organization. If they don't see themselves in the fit that they have in the organization, not only do they tend to wonder, but they also then go out and start thinking about how they could fit somewhere else in the organization, and it just doesn't fit. It's like, it would be like a puzzle. And like, if you the puzzle pieces all go into a spot, and if somebody doesn't realize that their piece has a impact on the entire puzzle, they start thinking, well, if I shave this little part off, I might fit better in the upper left-hand corner than I do right here. So why don't I just make this adjustment? And then you're making all the adjustments, and you're not doing the job that we need, and is gonna help the overall piece of what we do. So the thing that I think, the collective piece that we talked about, and when we first started in Fall Creek, one of the things that we knew was that we were in a declining enrollment situation. And the idea that, the kids weren't coming to our school because nobody was moving to town because there was nowhere to live. And one of the things that we could do with that group is, through open enrollment, people could come to school as long as they could get there. They could choose to come to Fall Creek. And our collective mission was knowing and understanding that if we got kids to come to school, then we could continue all the programs that we knew that were working, that were going to be left to the side if we weren't able to fund those with the people coming to school. So in the first year that we started thinking about this, we talked about the impact of not only telling the story of school, but leveraging all of those moments that we don't miss, that we can make sure that people feel good about being in school. We started doing that in 2010. And in 2010, we gapped 20 kids, which meant we had 20 more kids coming into the school district than going out of the school district. Now, for a school district of 835 kids, that's a lot if you think about it financially in terms of what the funding was and the formula was. 20 kids in 2010 before we started doing it. We did it for 13 years. In 2023, we gapped 135 kids. So 1 in 8 kids in that district didn't live in that district, just chose to come to that district. And they could go anywhere they want. They chose to come to us. And I think, and now it's even more. I mean, I've been gone this is my second year out of the building, and they're upwards of 160 on the gap right now. So, I mean, you're talking about like, this is the way that we continue to grow in a village that honestly, there was nowhere to live. Now there's more spots to live, but at the time there was nowhere to live. So nobody could move into town. So, so we had to figure out ways to do that. So in doing that, in leveraging all of these stories, we gave ourselves the best chance possible.
I think that's so powerful when the community, the learning community, is unified around a common mission, a common goal. There are so many good goals in education right now. We can talk about literacy and numeracy and technology and innovation and inclusion and UDL and Tier 1 and so many great things to focus on. But what's going to be that common unifying mission for the community? That's so important. Now, the book, again, is called Lead From Where You Are. I'm thoroughly enjoying the book, and I want to say not sponsored, but just a big fan here today. Something else that came from the book, too, is this idea that leaders should create more leaders regardless of their job titles. So speaking specifically to the Teachers on Fire, they are teaching in the classroom. They're not in any sort of leadership, formal leadership or admin position. What's your advice for that teacher in terms of raising leaders from the people around them?
Well, I think it doesn't happen. I mean, schools don't get better unless you do, because if the culture and climate is dependent on one person to be the leader and the only leader, first of all, the leader gets, absolutely overwhelmed, and then they start missing things, and then people start to question whether or not they're good at their job because they're missing things that they should be doing while they're trying to get everybody else's stuff done. So if you don't build capacity to lead as a leader in the building, as the principal or the AP or whatever, you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage. And I don't think people understand that. I think they think the opposite is true, that they have to be in charge of everything. So one of the things that I think has had the biggest impact on our group, I went back to that recognize, acknowledge, extend model that we do. If the recognize, acknowledge, extend model, where we're acknowledging the great work of the people around us, is only one person doing it, if it's only me doing it, it doesn't work. But what we've created in this space with the people who are unbelievable people is that everybody does it. So now it's not me walking into a second grade classroom anymore, because I can't be there all the time, and I'm not going to pretend to. Otherwise, you get that drive-by wave, like, hey, you're doing great, that kind of thing. That's not helping anybody, right? So when you can create this environment where everybody's doing it because it feels good and you're connecting these people, all of a sudden everything changes in the organization, because now we're all doing, and now everybody in the building is on the lookout for great things. And they're not walking with their head down to go to the copy machine. They're not walking with their head down to go to lunch and then back, to the classroom and close their door and just be done. They're trying to find ways to acknowledge and extend the great work that's happening around them, so nobody feels like they're isolated. And I'll tell you, man, like when you walk through the hallways, you can get the culture of a building literally by walking down the hallway and seeing how the adults interact with each other. And I'm so proud that we spent time, and I was in Fall Creek for 12 years. I'll tell you, there wasn't a day that went by that you wouldn't walk through the hallways and hear people talking about the adults in the building. I mean, it was really cool. I was in the middle school hallway a week before I was done. And it was great. I'm in the middle school, and middle school. Okay. Middle school, there's a lot going on in the middle school, and these kids are walking past me, and I'm standing during passing period. And as I'm sitting there in passing period, literally for 4 minutes, three different teachers walked up to me, 3 different ones, to tell me a story about one of their colleagues, 3 different colleagues, right? Well, they're not dumb. They know exactly what I'm going to do. As soon as I hear that story, I'm going to go tell the person that was being talked about that they were being talked about and by who was talking about them. So was it self-serving for them to do that? Maybe. Do I care? No. Because now I become the connector of great stories. And why wouldn't I want to do that? Your job always, this is hard work. Leading a school is hard. Leading a classroom is hard. Leading a department is hard. Whatever you're leading, it's hard, and it's isolating and lonely if you allow it to be. So when you live in a world where everybody's recognizing, acknowledging, and extending, you're walking with more purpose, because you know and understand that what you see is going to have an impact on the people that you talk to.
It's a virtuous cycle, and it just builds that shout out culture. And what a fun place to work. The kind of place that you're describing, right? When, as you say, we're all looking for greatness in each other. That's addictive, man. That is addictive. We've got our friend Josh Tovar, great principal from Garland ISD in Texas, tuning in. Buenos dias, hermano. I don't know if he's talking to you or to me. Probably, hopefully both.
I both.
Saludos, Joe. Okay, he's talking to you. And he also says, still on YouTube, it takes a few minutes to know the culture of a school. Absolutely. You get that feel pretty quickly in the halls. You start to see, and as you said, Joe, just watching the way that the adults interact with each other. Joe is parked by himself. Oh no. Hey, he's in a good place, Josh. He's in a good place, my friend.
It just seems that this is kind of the way that it works, man. That's just, I'm in northern Wisconsin. There's no reception in northern Wisconsin anywhere. So it's just hey, let's find a spot on the side of the road. I saw a tower. So I'm well, I got to be pretty close at this point. So let's just go here. I got 4 bars. 4 bars. 4 bars in Wisconsin is also on one street. But still, This is 4 bars of reception that I'm getting right now. It's a little different.
It's so great. And you're coming to us a crystal clear. Audio video is on point. So thank you so much, Joe. Thank you for joining us, Teachers on Fire. If you're getting value from this conversation, give the video a like. Joe, how would you respond to the building leader who says that he or she doesn't have time to invest in brand building or doesn't consider school brand a priority?
I would have, it depends. Are we live and in person with her, or are we behind closed doors where I can scream? Because here's the thing, so the brand is simply what people say about you when you're not there. That's all it is. So if you look at it that way, what do you want them to say about you when you're not there? And honestly, if you don't feel like that's a priority, then we got to have a conversation, because people are talking about your school. A lot of times the people who are talking about your school aren't the people that you want talking about your school. And I can't stop people from saying bad things about your school. But if it's the only thing that people hear, then this is who we all become. So the priority is real. I think if you shift the mindset of the priority, right? If you say that brand building isn't important, or you don't, it's not a priority, look at it this way. building the momentum of the people that you lead should be a priority. And if it's not, then we have a bigger conversation. So if you look at it that way, building the brand or making sure that people know and understand the work that happens in the spaces by the incredible people that are doing the work, that's a priority, because you want everybody to walk into and out of that school feeling better about the work that they did before they came into that school, right? So if they walk in with purpose every day, because they know and understand that you're going to champion for them and you're going to cheerlead for them and you're going to make sure that everybody knows the work that they're doing, then they're going to walk a little taller. They're going to walk with a little more purpose. They're going to be better for kids, and people are going to talk about your school a little bit differently. And that doesn't mean that everybody is going to, but all it takes is a couple people to start the momentum. And I think every time that we live by this whole mindset of never give up the opportunity to say something great about your school. If that's your mindset, if your mindset is to never give up the opportunity to say something great about your school, all of a sudden, it doesn't matter if you say it 1 time, 5 times, 10 times, 15 times. One of those is going to translate to somebody else, and they're going to tell that story too. So all we're doing is giving ourselves the best chance. None of it is it's not rocket science, and it's not automatic. It's just giving us the best chance. That's all this is. I don't have all the answers. I'm certainly not going to pretend to, but if we can give our people the best chance, then I walk, with a little bit more purpose. They walk with a little more purpose. We're not putting out fires all the time because we know and understand what we're there for. It just changes everything in terms of how you operate.
Yeah, and go Crickets, right, Joe? Did I get the mascot
Absolutely.
right? Yeah, go Crickets. You signed off for years that way, and that makes an impact because people start to say, I want to be part of that story, right? Yeah. This is a story of positivity and growth, and it's inviting everyone in the community into that story as well. What's one move, Joe, that school leaders can make to protect teacher fire and take better care of staff in 2024? You've got the benefit of sort of stepping outside a little bit, stepping away. What is that perspective telling you right now about protecting teacher fire in 2024?
Okay, so here's what happens. And I'm not going to try to profess this, but probably will sound like I'm professing this at some point, is that this work is so hard, and the gaps are where the problems are, right? The gaps are where the issues are. When you're isolated, when you're sitting in your room by yourself after everybody's gone, and you're guilty that you should be at home, but you're still doing work at school, and then you start feeling different about the school because you're guilty about where you're supposed to be or where you feel like you should be. The same thing happens at home. You're sitting on your couch at 6 o'clock at night with your kids, thinking about other people's kids. The gaps are the spaces that we have to try to close. And if we as school leaders can make sure that we close the gaps on those spots, we give ourselves a better chance. So like that recognize, acknowledge, accept model. If I walk into that 3rd grade teacher's room, tell a 3rd grade teacher she's doing great things, then go tell the 8th grade science teacher that she's doing great things, why don't we extend it to the 3rd grade teacher's son who's a sophomore in high school, and I know I can go find him and have a conversation, or make sure that I call her husband to make sure that he knows that she's doing great work at school. So when she walks home or when she goes home, all of a sudden that's the conversation that happens at school. It's not, oh, so how was school today, right? It's, hey, your principal called, said you're doing really great things. And then, of course, you pull the sophomore kid out of class to tell them that their mom is great. And then that kid goes home at night and says, can you tell Sanfelippo not to pull me out of class? It was super embarrassing, right? But at the same time, she knows that we were willing to have that conversation. We talk about this impact of 30-second moments, right? There's 960 30-second opportunities in an 8-hour day. What if you took 1 or 2 of those things and just sent a positive text message to somebody in their world who doesn't see them doing great things every day, right? If you do that once a day, you feel better, they feel better. It just changes the way that everybody operates. So logistically, what does it look like? We talk to our staff a lot about starting your day and ending your day with joy. And it's not just about joy, it's about starting and ending your day. But if you can start your day by making sure that you do something that helps you recognize greatness, and end your day by making sure that you also recognize and send something out to make sure that you come back the next day feeling more empowered and making somebody else feel empowered, honestly, for me, that was the thing that did it. When I could make sure that I could start and end my day, but I started it and ended it in a way that empowered somebody else. I walk home with more purpose and more connection. I walk to school with, feeling a little bit taller because I know I'm going to see that person and that person's going to say something about what I did, right? Now we get momentum and we keep moving forward. And if everybody's doing that, it changes the entire culture of your building.
Awesome stuff. One more sort of big picture question, then we'll start to wind down with some rapid fire ones. How can schools and districts better communicate with parents and community members? And for those watching and listening who are not familiar with Dr. Joe Sanfelippo and his work with his school district and community, we're talking about someone who regularly shot walking videos on his way to school and shared those videos on social media with the world and with the community. So I consider someone who is really an expert in this space. Talk to that building leader who is maybe struggling to find ways to connect and communicate with their community. What can they reach out to? Does it need to be video, or what are your thoughts there?
I think it needs to be something because it's all building momentum. There are two types of school districts in the world. It's the same way that my father-in-law describes deer and people in Wisconsin, right? There are two types of people in Wisconsin, those who have hit a deer and those who will. There are two types of school districts in the world, those who have gone through struggle and crisis and those who will. That's just what it is. So all the momentum that we build up prior to struggle and crisis is going to be how they respond to that struggle and crisis. And, I started doing videos for a couple reasons. The first reason, it's going to sound really ridiculous, but I'm super loud, as you obviously know by now. And I would wake up on Saturday mornings and I'd just be super loud and everybody else is sleeping. So I walk across the street to school and I started just doing videos because I was walking across the street to school. That's the first reason. The second reason that I started doing video was as the leader in the school, as a superintendent in the school, I knew there was going to be a time that there was going to be a TV camera in my face. And the TV camera in my face wasn't going to be about celebrating the great stuff that was going on. Something was going to happen. And if when the TV camera showed up in my face and I didn't feel confident, or I didn't look confident, or I didn't project confident, then the people that we serve, the people that we lead, the people that are watching the video are going to be like, oh, I don't know if he's telling the truth. Like, he stumbled over a lot of stuff there. I don't know if I can believe him, right? Because they don't know me. But when you can speak with confidence and you can speak, with purpose, and they know, and the points that you want to get out, it's more about the points that you get out and less about how they're delivered, right? So I think that was more of a training ground for me. So, when I started doing those videos, nobody was watching those videos. Nobody was watching them at all. So I could practice and practice and practice until people started watching them. And then you just you get good at it. So I think the idea about communicating with parents and community members, the first thing is make sure that you're out in front of all of those conversations. And again, never giving up the opportunity to say something great about your school, but make it consistent. We talk about the idea of being simple, unique, and repeatable. If your messages are simple, unique, and repeatable, then anybody can tell the story of your school, the story of your classroom, the story of your district from wherever they're at. If they have to wonder, they start filling in the gaps. We come back to these gaps, Tim. Like, these gaps are where we find the problems. If you can fill in the gaps with the things that you want them to know and understand, you give yourself a much better chance.
Simple, unique, and repeatable. I think that's really powerful for building leaders and teacher leaders to hang on to. And I don't want people to miss the genius of what you did, because in thinking about your time in the day, you didn't take any additional time to sit down and sort of prep a studio in your office or somewhere in your building. You just sort of shot and spoke from where you were. And I think principals can do that, whether they're posting videos to YouTube or whether they're using their stories on Instagram, whatever it is. There are ways, I think you would agree, to just use the time that you're already using. And there you were walking on your way to school. It didn't really cost you too much more time in your day. So you're not losing productivity. You're just adding in what you're able to communicate.
Absolutely.
As we start to wind down, Joe, I want to put a few rapid fire questions to you. First of all, share about one personal habit or productivity hack that contributes to your success and keeps your fire burning. Is there something that you go to on the daily or on the regular that helps you get it all done?
Absolutely. It's sending that text message, and it's not even close. start your day with one, end your day with one. Make sure that you take the time to send the 30-second text message. And honestly, it makes you feel better. It makes them feel better. It makes you walk with more purpose because you're watching, you're looking for something that you're going to make sure that you shout. Like, it gives you momentum. It gives the person that you're texting that to the family, whatever, it gives them momentum. Without question, it's sending the 30-second text message.
Point us to an edtech tool or app that you currently love using somewhere in your professional work or practice.
Any of the social media tools, but everybody says those. So I would probably say CapCut. So
Okay.
CapCut is just a really great video editing tool that honestly I use on my phone. Every time I go speak to a group, I jump out and take a couple pictures and thank them for letting me be there. And I just make a quick video in CapCut, and it's pretty seamless.
Recommend one book, one that you've been reading lately, or perhaps one of your all-time faves that's been deeply influential in your thinking.
Power of Moments by Dan Heath. And it's the science behind why people remember certain things and why they don't remember others. So if you're in a spot where you're not, like, I can't give you more time in your day. So, but if we can create the momentum to make sure that those moments are every moment matters. Like, that's we don't have to say that, but if we can capture them in a way that allows us to get momentum, then they mean more moving forward.
Tell us about one person that we need to follow on Education X, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, or now Blue Sky. I'm seeing more educators heading over to Blue Sky.
Yeah. Oh man, there's just so many. I would go to anybody who's leading. And I mean, Jimmy Casas, Tom Murray are two guys that I talk about all the time because I know I can trust the work that they do and the connections that they make. I'd probably start with those two guys.
And finally, what are the best ways for the Teachers on Fire to follow you? Where are you spending the most time?
Oh man, you put all the stuff up. I would like to be more active on YouTube, and I love what you do, and I love the momentum that you get out of it. So congratulations on that. I love that graphic, by the way. That's fantastic. So, but at the same time, I try to spend a little time on all of them. I've spent more time on LinkedIn, to be honest, because I'm trying to learn it more. I think that's kind of the way that it was. I started doing it on Twitter X for so many years, and it just kind of became like the thing to do. And utilizing LinkedIn right now has been more of a push for me, not because I think it's the best platform, but I just want to learn it. And I haven't spent any time learning it over the course of 10 years. So I want to make sure that I can learn it.
I'm going to add my vote to that as well. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, and more educators are gathering there for some pretty sensible, non-political. If that's your issue with X, I know some people get a little burnt by some of what's happening there. Then join us on LinkedIn. Some great conversations and activity happening over there. Well, Joe, I want to thank you so much for sharing some of your precious Saturday with me. I'm a little bit starstruck because I've sort of been watching you and listening for years. Big fan of your content. So thank you so much for sharing a bit of your Saturday with the podcast today. This has been fun and inspiring for me. I've got a lot to think about from this conversation. Teachers on Fire. I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you too decided to spend some of your day listening to this podcast. I hope that in some way the content you heard today from Dr. Joe Sanfelippo sparked your thinking and ignited your practice. And I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care. Go Crickets.
There we go.
Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.